SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, welcome back on the series on signages and wayfinding. This will be our 5th lecture, which is on technical requirements. Hello everyone, my name is Sneh. I am Associate Professor from Manipal University, Jaipur. Today we will be going through on our 5th lecture, that is technical requirements. What we will be studying in this is roadside signages, visibility and readability, viewer reaction time, viewer reaction distance, letter height, how we decide them, navigating spaces, signage legibility index, how to decide the signage size, what are the calculation methods, signage blocking and maintaining mounting height, signage legibility in built environment. But before we begin, let's have a quick recap what we have studied till now. We have gone into the details that what signages and wayfinding have their pivotal role in navigation. We have gone through the theory of Miller's model, which talked about the information, user and the environment. We also studied about environmental graphic design, different theories of Calvin Lynch, David Miller, Gibson, Paul Author, Rami Di Pessini. We have also gone through the transit layout, the building analysis and their effective navigation methods. Along with that, in the last lecture we have gone through on the significance of wayfinding principles, including conspicuity, legibility, readability. We have also gone into what are the colors, contrast and finishes and how they are more effective, in what ways, how we can classify the signages based on usage, locations and material. We also included the development and evolution of pictograms, what are the cultural and regional influences on signages and wayfindings, how to select the materials and their representation in signage design. Okay, so let's go onto the technical requirements of the signages. Before we proceed to the technical calculations of the signages for their position and sizes, we need to understand that why roadside signages, visibility and readability matters. Well, when a driver look at the roadside signages, their brain, their bodies go through certain series of actions to understand and react to the information. There is some mental, physical event happening simultaneously. That means viewing signage isn't just about seeing them. It involves thinking about the message, moving our eyes to read it and sometime adjusting our vehicle positions or speed, like reading this road name Bhavani Singh Road, which includes reading, understanding and then reacting to the message. In this complex task, there is a message needs to be processed where driver have to quickly understand what the sign is saying and how it relates to their driving. The eye movement, he needs to move his eye smoothly across the sign to read it, which requires coordination. Vehicle maneuvering. Sometimes driver may need to change the lane or adjust their speed while reading the signage, adding another layer of complexity. There are certain challenges due to dynamic nature of vehicle speed. Because drivers are usually moving on a high speed, viewing sign becomes more challenging. They need to process the information rapidly while also staying safe on the road. For example, imagine trying to read a sign while driving on a busy highway. I hope it's not that easy. Then why it is needed? Clear and consistent signage help in driving to understand information quickly and accurately. What is the importance? Follow scientific standards. They communicate effectively, reduce confusions and improve the safety on the road. Following standards of a signage design and placement enhances traffic safety by ensuring that the driver can easily see and understand the important messages. For example, signs are large, clear letters are easy to read, reduce the chances of accidents and caused by distraction while driving. Now, roadside signage visibility and readability. What is most important thing in this? The recent researchers have established that the viewer reaction time, the period required for drivers to notice and react to the roadside signs while driving at a certain speed, alongside factors such as letter height, message complexity and negative space. These measurements aid in determining the ideal signage size for clear communication and safe driving. Once the content is established, the factors like length and the complexity are considered. We assign numerical values to these key parameters. What are these parameters? First, viewer reaction time, viewer reaction distance, letter height, what is a cover area and what is the negative space. The combination of these will actually give us the tangible formula to decide what should be the size of our signage, what should be the letter height of our signage. Let's go to individual parts, that is, what is this viewer reaction time? We also call it as VRT. This refers to the duration of the time taken, perceive, process and respond to visual stimuli, such as roadside signages. It is a critical factor in road safety as it directly affects a driver's ability to comprehend, react to important information while driving. What are its components? Its components are perception, processing and response. Perceptions are the time it takes for a brain to recognize and interpret the visual information presented in the sign. The processing is a cognitive processing time requires to understand the message conveyed by the sign, and the response, which is the time it takes for a driver to physically react to the information presented in the sign and adjusting the speed and changing the lanes. Now, what are the factors which actually influence these viewer reaction time? First is a traffic safety. Viewer reaction time is influenced by traffic safety considerations. In busy or congested traffic conditions, drivers may have to have less time to react to the signage due to the need for increased attention to the surrounding vehicles and road conditions. For example, in a heavy traffic, driver may need to react quickly to the changing situation, such as sudden stop or a lane merges or reducing their availability of time to process, like that. Driver's convenience. Viewer reaction time can also be affected by driver's convenience factor. For example, if a sign is placed at a location that requires drivers to make a sudden or difficult maneuver to read it, their reaction time may increase. For example, if a sign providing directions to a destination in place immediately with the sharp turn or observed lately due to vegetation, driver may need to have more time for this, for reacting it, for responding to the sign. Then lastly, the signage efficacy. The design and placement of sign directly impact viewers' reaction time. Signage that are well designed, clearly visible and placed in strategic location can reduce reaction time by providing information quickly and effectively. For example, with the high contrast colors, a large font and a simple messages can enhance signage efficacy by making it easier for driver to understand and respond to the signage without significant delays. So, viewer reaction time actually helps in determining signage size, limits for various applications such as plan development, community sign systems or highway or wayfinding signages according to the table with the typical message content of a 6-word, that is 30 letters. The USSC standard viewer reaction time, the average is around 8 seconds, whereas in a complex road conditions, this can go up to 10 seconds. For the multi-lane, where we have many lanes on the roads, this maneuver time can go up to 10 seconds. Now coming to the viewer reaction distance. Viewer reaction distance is a distance measured in feet that viewer travel during the viewer reaction time. It is critical for determining sign legibility and size. Viewer reaction time actually helps in establishing the initial detection of distance between the viewer and the sign, influencing the required letter height for message. To calculate the viewer reaction time distance, we first have to convert the travel speed from mile per hour to feet per second using certain multiplier, which is 1.47. So, the viewer reaction time to obtain from the viewer reaction distance, the formula which we receive is this one. Now, let us go to the next factor, which is letter height. The legibility of sign depends on factors like letter height, its color and the font style. The impact of color and illustrations are also very effective. So, we need to consider these factors as well. The study used in Gothic and Roman style letter fonts like Helvetica to find the best letter height for different viewing distance. Based on that researches, the United States Sign Council credited the standard legibility index, which shows how far in feet a sign can be read for every inch of capital letter in height. The sign legibility index table also takes into account that letter height goes up to 15% when all the capital letters are used. We will go much deeper when we will be going through it. So, here while calculating the letter height, we have to take visual VRD into consideration, which is viewer reaction distance, and the constant, which is legibility index. Now, let us understand what are these negative spaces and signage legibility index. This is another factor which actually helps in calculating the signage size and the letter height which has been used in the signages. You can see the three images over here. Consider this as one of the signages. The 60-40 rule says that the copy area, which includes the text, symbols, etc., should take up to 40% of the sign, and about 60% of the sign should be empty space. So, if we combine these three words and get this area, it should come up to 40% of the entire signage panel size. This actually helps in moving the eyes and identifying the signage easily. Now, the signage legibility index is a numerical value that represents the distance, the typical measured in feet at which a sign can be read based on the height of its letters. It serves as a standardized measurement to determine the legibility of a sign under various conditions. The signage legibility index is a considering factor such as letter height, font style, color contrast and viewing distance to assess the effectiveness of the sign in covering the message to the viewer. How it is affected? So, it actually affects what is the complexity of messages. The complexity of the messages displayed in a sign can impact on its legibility index. The signage with simple, concise message can be generally more legible than those of the complex ones. The straightforward message allow for quicker comprehension, leading to the higher sign reflective index. Even the landscape also affect the overall signage legibility index. If the age of the viewer is more, then it is also affecting the overall legibility index. Older individuals may have reduced visual accuracy and contrast, making it challenging for them to read the sign with small and poorly contrasting letters. Therefore, signage intended for the older demographics may need to have larger letters. That means, if we are making the signages specifically for older localities, then we have to take care that the signage letter height needs to be more than what we receive from the calculations. If you see here in the table, I have used a signage which has the internal opaque one signage. I have used a letter which is style of Helvetica. The letter colors is white on black. That means they have very good contrast, up to 94%. Then, and I am using the letters which are all caps. All caps means all in capital letters. Then, the value of the legibility index would be around 28. Now, let us go through this calculation on how and what are the steps we have to follow for determining the signage size. So, to determine the size, first we need to know what is the travelling speed. We have to convert that in, we have to use the multiplier of 1.74 Then we have to calculate the viewer reaction time. After calculating the viewer reaction time, we will get, by multiplying it with the speed, we will get the distance. To determine the height, we will use the legibility index from the table. With this, we will calculate the single letter area, and if we know what our message is, we will then find out the area of the entire words, and then we will determine the copy area with the single letter. And since we know that these are the one which area we have received, it is a 40%, then we have to calculate, take 60% above, which is a negative area, and after adding we will receive the area of the signage. The overall formula which we receive from this entire process is this one. In this, we have N as number of letters, viewer reaction time is here, the speed miles per hour, legibility index here. Okay. Now, we do our calculation for you. This is one of the signage which we have to place. Now, let us find out what will be my area and what will be the height of the text. Okay. If we go back to the signage which we are using, first thing first, count the number of letters. So, if we count each letters, we can find out that there are 21 letters in this. From the previous slide, when we were going through on the viewer reaction time, the time, most appropriate viewer reaction time which is applicable is around 10 seconds. So, that means when we have a sign, we read it, we understand it, we react it, it takes around 10 seconds in this entire process. So, take 10 seconds is what we are taking for this. Then the speed, which is on a medium size traffic road, we are considering it as 35 miles per hour speed. And if I want to use the signage which has a internally opaque illumination, I want to use the Claydon font, which is letter style, and I want to have a good contrast. So, I am using white on a black background, which is this one. It is the black background and the white text. In that case, from the table we can find that if since the letters are all caps, we will find that the legibility index value is 30. The same I am using it here. Then let us now calculate by putting all the data in this formula. We find this value of 107 square feet. So, we got the area of this. Now, sign with 144 we have multiplied to convert that feet into inches. Since the letter height we will be measuring it in inches. Now, adding to this value, we have to add 60% more. So, we get that around this value 6163. Now, if this is my overall area and I am using 21 letters for the write-ups, what would be my letter height? So, considering that each letter, if this is the letter, length and width, this and this are equal, we have to take out the root of this value. That makes me to get 17 inches. I think you should try this by doing your own. Try to choose some messages or just take some message from the roadside and try to do this calculation. And just check whether the height of the text which has been used on the signages, are they matching to your calculations? Try to do it. Okay. Now, we calculated the signage size, but is that enough? What about the signages blocking? Fine. So, what about the blocking? Sometimes we think that putting the signages on, if you see there is a signage is put on the right side of the slide, they are exactly the same size what we wanted. But what happens if now what? Is it okay? What will happen to the people who are actually behind this vehicle? You can easily see that this actually, the vehicle has made the other vehicles impossible to read the message. So, the overall idea of designing and putting the signages of the exactly what sizes it is required, that has been lost. So, in this case, we have to work on something which is increasing the height. But sometimes there are challenges which we receive in posting this sign above the height due to certain local regulations, where we have to have these monumental signs at certain height. So, we have to collaborate with them, putting our issues and coming it to certain levels where we can put these signages which is more visible and adequate to the people, maximum people to visually see it. There are also some other ways of figuring out how tall signages can be put in. Depending on how many cars are on the road and how far apart the signages are. But we are currently not going into that much calculations. Okay? Okay. Now, we have calculated the sizes of the signages. How will we calculate if I want to put a signage on my building, that too a projected signage? I hope you remember what the projected signages are. So, if you see on the screen, if I want to put a signage over here, which is jutting out from the building, is called projected signage. If you see this plan, let me write, this is a plan and this is my building. So, this is the building wall. If this is my boundary wall of my building, and this is L, which means the length of the building, which is this one. This is the length, where M is a permissible projection or a maximum projections you can put in. That means sometimes you get it from two phenomena. One is maximum projections based on the material constraints, and sometimes these projections are based on the setback laws. So, you cannot go beyond 1 meter usually. Why not to let us calculate it? Let us have the value as, hope this the building length of the building, let us take it 10 meters and this M, which is the maximum projection, as 1 meter. As I told you, that permissible limit is 1 meter. Maybe it differs in some of the regions. So, now if we take the distance of the signage from the nearest end, which is D, I want to put my signage somewhere here. So, I want to know what is my permissible projection, what should be this projection limit. So, how will I calculate that? Let me put this into formula, which is 2 into my m value is 1 meter and d, yes, the d value, which is I don't want to put the signage at the center. Maybe this is the good place where I want to keep my signage. So, maybe this value is around, let us take it as a 4 meter. So, d I am taking it as 4 meter. So, this is 4. So, what and then what is the length? This is 10. So, we receive that around 0.8, that means we can say 800 mm, right. So, this is one of the way of calculating how should we decide the projection of the sign. Now, we talked about the signages which is on the road, the signages on the buildings. Now, we will be going inside the buildings, that how these signage legibility is there in the built environment. Okay. For interior signage calculation, the process begins by defining the type of signage we want to use. These classifications are essential as different signage serves various purposes and are viewed from different distances. Once the sign type is determined, the maximum viewing distance for the specific sign type are identified. Using data from a standard graph which is developed by Paul Author in 1970, the viewing distance was calculated. The graph provides insight into typical viewing distance based on factors such as signage locations, the purpose, the environment in which it is placed. After determining the average viewing distance, the appropriate text height of the sign is decided upon. Let us take this one example. I want to have, you see this graph, this side, this one. I am standing at 100 feet, that is in the graph if I go with the viewing distance. So, I take this sign. So, if I am standing at the 100 feet, what should be the height of my text? If I see that for the normal condition, which is we are seeing it as ideal conditions. So, it has to be something around 2 inches, whereas if I want to design a signage which specifically for a accessible building, suppose accessible school, then in that case we have to go for ADA compliances, and suppose 150, I am standing at the 150 feet. So, what should be my text height? Go have to this way, and yes, 6 inches. So, I have to make the signage which has 6 inches letter height. Okay. Along with this table, there are certain instructions which outlines the best practices for installing signages in the built environment, particularly next to the door, latches or on the wall. It emphasizes the importance of placing the signage on the side where the door latch is located. This assures that the signage is easily visible and accessible to individuals entering or exiting the door. It is advised that there has to be no obstructions around the signages. This means that this area surrounding the signage should be clear by any objects or obstacles that could be, create a blocking or hindrance in visibility. The instructions also recommends that avoiding the placing of signage in the path of the doorway. Placing the sign in this location could potentially obstruct the door movement and posing a safety hazards and inconvenience to the individuals. Think about that you are looking for a signage which is on the door and somebody has put the door in open conditions. So, you might not find where the signage is if you are coming on the opposite direction of it. Also, for a journal direction sign, there has to be a range in which it has to be placed, which is 1400 mm from the bottom to 1700 mm from the top. It should be repeated along any longer length of a travel and at any intersections. What about the hanging signs? These hanging signs that are placed at the right angle to the wall or hanging from the ceiling. The bottom of the sign should be 2100. That means this one. It should not be less than 2100, which is actually also the height of a door. Or even it can be for a larger crowded area, it can be 2300 or above. From the floor level, this is the floor level. The reception desk, probably the font which been used on the reception desk kind of can be used by wheelchair users. So, it has to be taken into consideration to the accessible guidelines. Even the lifts and toilet signages, they have to be perpendicular to easy recognition, and it has to be sized the viewing distance path. That means it has to be in size with what the graph says. That means you have to know which is your decision point, because decision point actually acts as your point where you decide. So, that is the point where you can be able to see the sign. Now, it is said, since we have covered the technical sections of this signage and wayfinding, although we have explained all the complexities of the signage design and even the calculation methodology, it is essential to keep in the mind that the regulations and the code greatly influence our design choices. As we navigate through the design process, it is essential to acknowledge that while codes may not always provide the perfect solutions, but they serve as a framework that must be carefully considered. So, you can say in the other words, code is not always right, but it is always something that needs to be considered in the design process. Let us take one example. When we place a signage taking consideration into educational building, there are certain amenities which are of greater importance and some of them are lesser important. There are certain points where there is a much congestion, especially in the peak hours, like the classes immediately after the lunch. We need to be careful about placing these signages, considering the number of students passing by that signages. If we put the signage at human height location, that is eye level locations, and we have a huge crowd, which means more than 100 people at one lift corner, what will happen? There are chances that people might not be able to see the signages. This is also important that the lifts and the staircase signages, they need to be placed perpendicularly. What does this perpendicularly means? That if I am coming from the corridor and left, or let's see, let me draw this. This is the corridor and your staircase is located at this place. So, this is your staircase locations. What do you think? Which is the best place to keep the signages of indicating that there is a staircase? If I put my signage over here, and this is the way, I mean you can see it from here, this A indicates that this is written side of the signage. It is very difficult for the people who are passing from these corridors to visualize it. So, it is recommended to have the signage something here, which actually solve two purposes, that if A and B, that means the signage has the pictogram mentioned here about, yes, there is a staircase. So, we will have the sign which will have the symbol of staircase saying this is staircase, and this is projected, that means it is coming jetting out from the wall, and it has displaying this information both sides. See how we save the money as well. It is economical because it's solving both the purposes for the people, traffic coming from this side and even for this side. Similarly, while doing one of the projects, I encountered this one difficulty, that in the hospital building, we have to put the signages which are usually on ceiling hung. But some places, because of these ducting, it was not possible for us to put the signage because this height which is a standard round, hope you remember, 2100 to 2300, we were not getting that height. So, these kind of challenges you might face while you do the designing of your signages. In that case, what we did was, since it was a glazed panel, we actually accommodated at a certain distance, we accommodated the signages on those glazed panels, which were just above 2 meters away from that particular point where our decision making points was. So, these are the things which we need to consider, and this is what we have learned today, that while putting the signage locations, while designing what the text size should be, we need to take care of the size of the text, the font of the text, and location of the text, location of the signage. With this, we are finished with the technical calculation part. Let's go to the summary and just recap what we have gone through today. Okay. So, first thing first, we read about the roadside signages, their visibility and readability, why these roadside signages are important, because there are many people using the vehicle, they have to read the message, they have to understand the message, and they have to react to it. That too with the vehicle maneuver. That means they have to either reduce the speed or adjust the vehicle based on the circumstances. So, this becomes very important. Next thing we studied about was viewer reaction time. It is the time in which a viewer actually react to the particular message. That means he read the message, understand the message and respond to it. Then comes the viewer reaction distance, which we identify, which we calculate with the help of viewer reaction time, that is the overall distance covered in this entire process of reading, understanding and reacting. Then we talked about the letter height. How this letter height is decided based on the calculation, which includes your legibility index, which we identified from the table. If we are using certain type of a elimination in the signage, we need to understand, we need to use the value from the table. It may differ in case I am using the lower case letters and higher case letters. Then we did the calculation in determining what should be my letter height in case I am using the signage at the roadside, where also one more important thing is what is the speed at which the vehicles are flowing at that particular highway. So that becomes also one of the important things. You also need to understand that for a very crowded highways and the major transportation signages, this actually goes as major part to the transportation design, but at least for your community where you are locating, small locations or urban sites settlement, we need to know that though there we also have the roads there. So if we are maintaining certain speed limits, what should be the sign size and how we are going to maintain it. This overall session will actually be helpful for that context. Then we also talked about what is the signage blocking and how can we remove it, what is a minimum mounting height, and if we have any regulations, which is local regulations, how can we handle it by discussing with the local authorities and doing certain changes and other various methods. We also talked about the signage legibility in the built environment. We later quoted with different examples. So this was one of the important sessions for the overall journey of the signage and wayfinding course. So this is it from my side. These are certain references which you can look into. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chitwan Lalji, a PhD student of Health Economics under the supervision of Dr. Debayan Pakrashi from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kanpur. In one of my essays, I'm interested in understanding the relationship between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators. Health indicators, both subjective and objective health indicators like mental health, self-assessed health, various measures of blood pressure and various measures of cholesterol. Measures of blood pressure like systolic and diastolic BP, you have your incidence of high BP, MAP and incidence of high MAP. And as far as cholesterol is concerned, I have tried to concentrate more on total cholesterol, good cholesterol and incidence of high cholesterol. Now before I go on to what have been my major contributions and various policy implications, I would like to briefly tell you about the policy initiatives of WHO and various countries. the WHO, that is the World Health Organization, it started with a campaign of 5 a day. That is, you should have 5 portions of fruits and vegetables per day. That would be approximately, you could say, 400 grams of fruits and vegetables. Now, a portion, before we go further, I'll just tell you what exactly is a portion. One portion is equivalent to a medium-sized apple, or one small glass of fruit juice, which is approximately 150 milliliters, and maybe 3 teaspoons of vegetables. So, the WHO went with the 5 a day campaign, which was further taken up by various countries. Countries like UK, Netherlands, Germany, Norway, they adopted the 5 a day policy, while some went for expansionary dietary policies like France, Australia, Canada, Denmark. So, for example, Australia, it went for 2+5 policy, in which it said that you should consume 2 portions of fruits and 5 portions of vegetables per day. And USA went for a policy of fruits and vegetables more matters. That is, you must consume more and more fruits and vegetables. Now, irrespective of these expansionary dietary policies and dietary propagations, it has been found that only 28% of women and 25% of men, they actually meet the recommended dietary norms of 5 a day portion. So, the major contribution of my work is firstly to find an association between fruits and vegetables, whether there exists a relationship between fruits and vegetables and health indicators, and if they exist, whether due to heterogeneity in the data. So, I will be doing it according to age, by gender, and by your weight. So, apart from that, I will go for policy recommendations, in which I am basically studying how much fruits and vegetables matter. Apart from that, which type matters more. So, for that, I have taken data from the Health Survey of England. Health Survey of England is an annual survey which takes data, which conducts information regularly on demographic and socioeconomic characteristics. You have your lifestyle behaviors, like an individual smokes or doesn't smoke, alcohol consumption, you have your sedentary and physical activities, and you have various health indicators also which have been collected. Before I go on to what exactly is my research, I would like to concentrate more on fruits and vegetables, like what kind of questions were asked in the survey. Questions like, what kind of fresh fruit do you eat? Did you eat any dried fruit yesterday? Don't count dried fruits in cereals, cakes. Apart from that, for vegetables, they asked how many tablespoons of vegetables did you eat yesterday. So, approximately after this whole survey was conducted, data was converted into portions of fruits, and like for example, 3 tablespoons of vegetables is equivalent to 1 portion. So, data was converted and provided to the users, that is us, from the UK Data Health Survey. So, the major contributions of my paper is that I found a strong negative association between intake of fruits and self-assessed health, then various measures of blood pressure like mean arterial pressure, high mean arterial pressure, high blood pressure, systolic and diastolic BP, and your total cholesterol. Apart from that, I have found a strong positive association between consumption of vegetables and good cholesterol. So, it is recommended in a way that if you want to control your blood pressure, you must consume more and more fruits. And as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact your good cholesterol. Apart from that, I went in for a falsification test. A falsification test is basically conducted to know whether the model that you have adopted and the conclusions that you are drawing are not spurious. So, if a falsification test is done to know, in a way it is tested by seeing an indicator, a health indicator which is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and then we see whether there is significant result or not. If there is no significant result, that means your model is good and your results are non-spurious. So, what we did is, for falsification test, we took ear complaints and infectious diseases. Now, ear complaints like if you are deaf since birth, or you have some kind of imbalance, body imbalance, that is not being impacted by your consumption of fruits and vegetables, and we did find insignificant results. Apart from that, infectious diseases like HIV, AIDS, etc., we found similar insignificant results, indicating that our results are non-spurious. Apart from that, we went, since there was a lot of heterogeneity in the data, like by gender, by age, and by weight. We did the regression analysis. We found results which stated that as far as fruits are concerned, it impacts a male's health more than a female's health. So it is basically said a man should consume more fruits to impact his health, whereas as far as vegetables are concerned, they impact a woman's health more. But this has been only seen as far as cholesterol is concerned, the various measures of cholesterol like total cholesterol, good cholesterol and your incidence of getting high cholesterol. Now after this we went in for a policy implication, and in the policy implication we tried to find two policy implications, what matters and exactly how much portion matters. So as far as how much portion matters, we have found that on an average 5 or more portions of fruits impact your overall health, that is your self-assessed health, your MAP, your incidence of high MAP and incidence of high BP. But if you want to have a good mental health, so you can optimize your mental health by consuming 3 or 4 portions of fruits as well. And similarly, as far as self-assessed health and total cholesterol is concerned, an individual must consume 4 to 5 portions to optimally have the impact of consumption of fruits. Apart from that, vegetables have had a very little impact on your health. It only impacts your incidence of getting high MAP and high BP, and it's seen that only it impacts when you consume 5 or more portions of fruits. So an optimum consumption of 5 or more portions of fruits and vegetables are recommended, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health, on various measures like self-assessed health, mental health, your various measures of blood pressure and various cholesterol levels. Another thing that we find is which type of fruit matters. It has been seen that all size fruits, they impact your self-assessed health, your systolic and diastolic blood pressure, your mean arterial pressure, your high BP and incidence of getting high MAP and high cholesterol. But we find that as far as frozen fruits or canned fruits are concerned, they help in regulating your incidence of getting high MAP or high BP, but it has a trade-off. That means there is something negative happening. It reduces the good cholesterol in your body. Apart from this, if you have an incidence of getting high cholesterol, it is recommended that you must consume fruit juices because it has a impact in reducing your probability of getting high cholesterol. And dried fruits, they impact your self-assessed health. As far as vegetables are concerned, very little impact has been seen. It has only been seen in case of portion of salads and its association with self-assessed health. Another thing that they have seen is vegetables in composite, they have an association with good cholesterol. So overall, my research basically says that there is an association between consumption of fruits and vegetables and various health indicators, and it is highly recommended that an individual, in order to be healthy, must consume 5 or more portions of fruits and 5 or more portions of vegetables per day, but fruits have a more impact on your overall health. Apart from that, all size fruits, they have a better impact on your overall health, your mental health, various measures of blood pressure and cholesterol. So, thank you.